In this short video, I want to look at a way that even lazy people can make some money potentially from stock market investing. Investing is actually quite hard, but there are a few tips and techniques that will enable you to make some money even if you can't face doing the job 100% properly. So, with no more ado, Ronald Reagan's advice. It's true hard work never killed anybody, but I always figured, why take the chance? Now, what I'm suggesting is, if you want to get rich quick, stop watching. But that's actually true of many of my videos. Here, 3 tips for anyone prepared to sit back, wait, and build wealth, what I call the slow way, without having to put too much sweat in the process. So what are these 3 techniques? The 3 amigos, as I've called them. 1, harness the power of compounding. 2, reinvest dividend income. And 3, take your tax breaks. And I'm assuming that you are prepared to go into the stock market and you're going to use these 3 weapons, if you like, to maximize the amount that you earn over the long term. There are no guarantees in investing, but these 3 are your friends when it comes to getting the most for your money for relatively little effort. Now, what are they? Number 1, the ability to earn interest on interest. One of investing's few free lunches. It's a topic I've covered before, so do see other videos. I'm going to just highlight why here. £1,000 earning a real 5% return. Now that's not guaranteed, it's assumed, and the word real means post-inflation. So let's assume you had £1,000 and you could earn a 5% real return. And literally all you do, this is the lazy part, is invest it once and then sit back and wait and see what happens. Well, after 1 year, nothing very much has happened, to be honest. Your £1,000 has crept up a little bit, as you'd expect. You've just added 5% to £1,000. That's another £50 on top. But things get much more interesting 20 years out. And the red bubble just indicates that for doing practically nothing other than getting a consistent level of real return on your money, not doing anything with it, just leaving it alone, you could have increased your purchasing power 2.5 times or thereabouts. Or put it another way, your £1,000 is now more like 2,653. And that means it buys a lot more at that point than it did when you started. So there you go. Now, if you're able to afford a monthly saving, the effect, the compounding effect, can be more dramatic. So let's put £250 earning that real return, not guaranteed, just assume for the example, of around 5%, a sort of long-term UK stock market return. If you were looking at, say, the Barclays Equity Gilt Study, for example, after 10 years, that £250 is clocking away. Bar's moved up a little bit. After 20 years, it moves up further still. But let's assume we're a long-term investor. And even someone in their 30s or 40s today should have a time horizon of 40 years, perhaps even more based on longevity. After 40 years, the £120,000 that you've put in, that's £250 a month for 12 months for 40 years, has become £372,141. Quite a jump and quite an increase. That's a real return in your purchasing power, ability to buy stuff. And once again, once you've set up the kind of direct debit and chosen the right home for those funds, you haven't had to do an awful lot to get that size of return. That's compounding for you. Interest on interest, or money earning money on itself. Number 2, reinvest dividends. Now, a lot of people think stock market investing is all about capital gains, and certainly some of it is, but the power of reinvested dividends is quite phenomenal. One example. Supposing you had a fairly generous sum, £25,000, to invest at the start of probably the worst period you could have possibly chosen in recent stock market history, the start of the 1970s bear market, which in a few years would have basically taken 2/3 of the value off your money and left you feeling pretty nervous and anxious. Let's say you put £25,000 in there, but you had the courage of your convictions, you left it to grow, and what's more, you didn't pull out dividends as the shares you were buying paid them. In other words, you reinvested dividends into more stocks rather than pulling out and spending them. Where would you be winding all the way forward, according to the Barclays study for 2015, many years later? Wind forward to near enough today. The answer is the person who thought, oh, I've been clever, I sidestepped that bear market because I went into cash at the start of it, would have made a respectable, getting on for £400,000. I mean, there were some decent periods of interest rates along that time bar on the bottom. But the person who weathered the storm in the early 70s, left their money invested, went for what Barclays call a UK equity total return. Now, this is Barclays numbers, if you like. In other words, capital plus reinvested dividends would have turned £25,000 after a hairy start, and some, bits along the way where the stock market would have made you pretty nervous. You hung on in there, that becomes more like 2.7 million. It's a fairly spectacular change from where you started off. So that's the power of reinvested dividends, a topic I cover in other videos in more detail. And number 3, minimize tax. Now, this takes a little bit of effort, but not a whole load of effort, and the payoff is potentially large. So, ISAs and SIPs. Now, I cover them in detail in other videos, so do look at those other videos. What are ISAs? How SIPs can help pension savers? ISAs versus SIPs. So let's leave those to one side. A recap. Why are these a great idea, even though they do require a little bit of effort up front? ISAs, basically the deal is there's no tax relief on the way in. So you pick this tax shelter, you shovel your money in, and you've already paid tax on it because it's probably money you earn from your employer, for example. But there's no further tax to pay. So once the money's in there, taxed already, it can then generate investment growth free from further tax. And if you pull it out, there's no tax penalty to pay at any point. SIPs, very quick reminder, you and an employer, not just you, can pay into a self-invested personal pension. It's a style of personal pension, lots of choice as to what the money's invested in, and there's tax relief on the way in. So as a basic rate taxpayer, 80p from you can become £1 on the way into the SIP, and with a bit of jiggery-pokery, a higher rate taxpayer can put 60p in and turn it into £1. All right, and the deal is, out the other end, you get a tax-free lump sum. That's great. In case you've had tax relief on the way in and tax relief on the way out, doesn't get much better than that, albeit you have to wait till you're 55 to get to it, and the remainder is then taxed. But these two represent quite clever ways, without loads and loads of effort, to shield your growing portfolio from most of the taxes that would otherwise hit it. Now, red arrow just indicates that while your fund is growing, there is tax relief, no further tax to pay. The power of an ISA, just look at one of these, okay? If we took a 3% growth rate, a 6% growth rate, a 9% growth rate, and we were putting, say, £1,250 in per month for 15 years, so a decent length of time, that's clocking up towards annually the current ISA investment limit, by the way, that's why I chose it. So £1,250 per month for 15 years. The amount invested is the same whatever growth rate you get. I've gone for a lowish, a sort of medium, and a kind of aggressive, if you like. None of those are by definition guaranteed. So the green bar is £225,000 in. The white is the extra tax-free growth bit on top, if you like. So 225 could become 283,500, or 360, or 462. You don't know which one up front, but it could become one of those sums. It's pretty powerful stuff. Other techniques. Now, I've just mentioned one or two techniques for reducing tax, but other routes: use up your personal allowances. These are beyond the scope of this video, but worth discussing. Use up your capital gains tax allowances. People sometimes forget about those. And minimise your inheritance tax liabilities. But that would require you to be a little bit less than 100% lazy, so I'll leave them to one side for this video. Now, there are risks. Stock market returns are not guaranteed, and my lazy way to make some money does involve stock market investing, compounding, reinvesting dividends. Tax rules can change. I'm afraid governments do have a habit of changing the tax rules. And dividends can occasionally be reduced or cancelled, which is why you don't want to take single stock risk, why you want to be well diversified as you try and achieve your long-term lazy gains. And for those people thinking, all that sounds like too much effort, I'm going to stay in cash, there is a much bigger risk than any of the three I've just highlighted, in my opinion, and that is for people who think the lazy way to get wealthy is to sit on cash. This is what inflation does to £100, historically at least, over the long term. £100 around 1974, reduced to a fraction of that by more or less the current day, according to Bloomberg Retail Price Indices data. So there may be risks to stock market investing, but there arguably is a larger one even still. Covered a lot of ground there. Do fire any questions to the usual email.